We are told that bacteria, parasites, and virus are responsible for disease. What if I told you that they aren't, and the only thing responsible for disease is man-made toxins? Bacteria, virus, and parasites are responsible for removing degenerative tissue and toxins from the body. They are not responsible for actual disease. Disease is man-made, not created by God or nature. There is a common idea that has been pushed by mainstream science for over 100 years now, and it's called germ theory. This idea is that disease comes from germs, rather than from your environment or from pollution. The competing theory to germ theory is called terrain theory. Antoine Béchamp was an outspoken proponent of terrain theory. The idea that disease comes from a polluted terrain, your environment, or in other words, from chemicals and pollution in your air, water, food, and medication. There have been many opponents to germ theory over the last century since its initial launch into mainstream education, but they have been largely hidden from the media as most truth is today. Flus are not contagious. They are a seasonal detoxification of the body. Do you ever wonder why everyone gets the flu at the same time every year? It's not because we get it from one another, it's because it's the season our bodies tend to cleanse the body out most often. Right after winter, when we are cooped up indoors without much sunshine to boost the immune system and keep us at our peak health and clean the toxins from our environment. The idea that flu viruses are contagious is a total illusion, like most things in this world are. Once you start waking up to the truth of your physical world, you realize that most, if not all of this is an illusion, including the idea of contagious disease. There are a lot of myths going around about viruses and colds. You want a cold. A cold is a detoxification. The cold is primarily bacteria, the flu is viral. When you become so toxic that the bacteria cannot remove the toxins from your body without being killed by the cell, then viruses are manufactured by your cells to clean the cell so there is no damage to the DNA. Viruses are not transmutable, alive, or airborne. Viruses do not have a nucleus, respiratory system, digestive system, so how can they be alive?
Again, viruses are not alive, they're just solvents that dissolve matter. And if you're using a solvent, like if you're cleaning your driveway of grease, you have a water base with a solvent. And what happens, you wipe it up and then it gets into the bucket, and you have this bucket of all this water, maybe 2.5 to 3 gallons of water, and it's all contaminated. So it's a lot to cleanse and flush out of the system. If your body's using bacteria or parasites, they consume the degenerative tissue and they put out a fraction of it as a excrement. So let's say, like a parasite can eat 100 times its weight in 24 hours and have 1% feces. That's like us eating 100 pounds and having a 1 pound, feces the next day. I don't have to handle 100 pounds. I only have to handle a pound. That's the way the body works. And if it's a bacteria, they can do about 50 times their weight in 24 hours and have about a 5% secretion, sometimes up to 8. So they even reduce it. We will eat 14 pounds and have a pound, excrement the next day, a whole pound excrement. So it's much better to have bacteria and parasites rather than virus. So this is the first bacterial cold that I've had in 3 years. I pray for them, because it's so much cleaner. There are less symptoms. It can even be asymptomatic except for the mucus flow. Of course, it's partially in my brain, so if I cough, the brain hurts when I rattle it. So
if you get a cold, it means your body is
detoxified.
So there's no such a thing as too many colds, because I went through 3 of that in the last few months.
No, that's wonderful. That means your body's dumping wonderfully. And when you have no bacteria and no fungus or no parasites to do that, your body uses virus. And viruses are not alive. They have no respiratory system. They have no nucleus.
Why is it contagious?
It isn't contagious.
Okay, why the kids at the school and everybody's all of a sudden got coughing and there's 9,000 kids that are sick? Oh, you know what I'm saying? They say the flu.
Because it's seasonal.
Seasonal. And how is one catching it from the other
You're not
person?
catching it.
You're not catching it.
It's seasonal. That's like saying bears are contagious. You know, the bears come out of hibernation, let's say, in Colorado first. And then they move up to Iowa, and then Dakotas, Wyoming, and then it goes into Canada and up to Alaska. That's like saying bears are contagious. Seasonal. They go into hibernation, they come out of hibernation.
So it's like
Seasonal. Exactly. Sometimes
So they
somebody...
don't catch it specifically from another child.
they're eliminating it.
Pardon?
They're eliminating
They're eliminating...
whatever they have when they get sick. It's just an elimination.
Yeah, it's eliminating whatever the virus has broken down. There's a team of doctors that I lectured to about 22 years ago at Yale who were involved in a study that found that 80% of cancer reverses immediately following a cold or a flu. 80% of the cases of cancer reversing immediately followed cold or a flu.
Have you ever wondered how mainstream science keeps coming up with these concepts that viruses replicate? Well, what happens in a petri dish does not correlate with what happens in a human body. The petri dish is sterile, unlike the human body. So those cells in the petri dish become contaminated in that fertilized environment without any bacteria as a shield, and they start producing virus.
You put live cells in a petri dish, remember it's sterile. It's not like in the human body, even though our blood is considered sterile. There's bacteria and everything in there, but they consider it non-active when it's in the bloodstream. However, when you put it in a petri dish, it is not like in the human body. So those cells start getting contaminated by that fertilized environment, and they start making viruses to clean themselves. So that's why the growing or the production of virus is so high in a petri dish.
Remember the bird flu scare? When the media had everyone scared they were going to get a deadly virus from a bird. What a ridiculous idea. You can't get viruses from other people, and especially not from other animals. This is not how the world and our bodies were designed. Viruses are dead proteins, not alive and without respiratory or circulatory systems, or a nucleus. Birds have viruses from eating diseased bugs that are full of pesticides, and their bodies produce viruses to remove the pesticides from their system.
All birds have viruses today because of all the pesticides we have, all the diseased bugs that they eat. So they can't use parasites and bacteria to cleanse themselves anymore. They have to use viruses.
There have been many studies that have tried to transmit virus from one person to the other, and they have failed every time. There has never been a controlled study done on two populations where one was vaccinated and one wasn't, and then measured for virus after. You would think with all the vaccines being pushed, they would do a study like this, but there never has. They are basing their virus on a theory, never anything that has actually been proven.